Long before the towering spires of modern skyscrapers pierced the heavens and long before the written word recorded the rise and fall of empires, a mythic structure, shrouded in both legend and historical ambiguity, stood at the heart of Mesopotamia, a colossal monument so ambitious and defiant it was said to challenge the gods themselves, known throughout Judeo-Christian tradition as the Tower of Babel, a symbol of human pride, divine punishment, and the fracturing of linguistic unity, yet as with many ancient stories cloaked in metaphor and oral tradition. The real story of the Tower of Babel, lost in time and layered with allegory, archaeological fragments, and half-remembered truths, is far more complex, echoing through the ruins of Babylon, the ziggurats of Sumer, and the clay tablets of forgotten scribes, beginning with the cryptic account in Genesis 11 verses 1-9, which describes a united humanity speaking one language, migrating eastward and settling in the land of Shinar, where they decided to build a city and a tower with its top in the heavens. Not merely as a feat of engineering but as a monument to their unity and ambition, and God, seeing their pride and fearing what humans might achieve if left unimpeded, confused their language and scattered them across the earth, halting the construction and giving the place the name Babel, from the Hebrew Babel, meaning to confuse. And while this tale has captured the imagination of believers and storytellers for millennia, the deeper question remains, was there ever a real tower that inspired this legend, and if so, what can it tell us about early human civilization, language, and power? To answer this, we must journey back nearly 4,000 years to the cradle of civilization, the fertile lands between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, where cities like Uruk, Eridu, and later Babylon rose from the marshy plains of Mesopotamia, bringing with them writing, law, astronomy, and monumental architecture, including the ziggurat, a step tower of mud brick that functioned as both temple and cosmic symbol, believed to connect earth and heaven. And it is in Babylon, one of the greatest cities of antiquity, where we find the most likely candidate for the real Tower of Babel, the Edamananke, or Temple of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth, a gargantuan ziggurat dedicated to Marduk, the chief god of the Babylonian pantheon, originally built by the Amorites around the 18th century BCE and later rebuilt by Nebuchadnezzar II in the 6th century BCE to stand nearly 300 feet high, making it one of the tallest structures of the ancient world, rising in 7 massive tiers, each brightly colored and symbolically aligned, and described by ancient sources such as Herodotus and the Babylonian priest Berossus, who noted its grandeur and significance as the spiritual axis of Babylon, where the annual Akita festival was held and where priests would ascend the tower in ritual reenactments of the gods' descent to earth. And although the Edamananke was ultimately destroyed, likely by time, neglect, and conquest, particularly under Alexander the Great, who intended to rebuild it but died before doing so, its image lived on, morphing through centuries of Jewish exile narratives, mythological transformation, and biblical interpretation into the Tower of Babel. And this convergence of history and myth is not unusual in the ancient world, where oral traditions often preserved echoes of real events through symbolic storytelling, and in the case of Babel, the symbolism was potent. The tower came to represent not just architectural ambition but the dangers of human hubris, the loss of divine favor, and the origin of linguistic diversity. Yet ironically, modern linguistic and archaeological evidence suggests that the emergence of different languages long predates the urban centers of Mesopotamia, with language divergence likely beginning over 100,000 years ago as early Homo sapiens spread across continents, and thus the biblical account, while theologically powerful, serves more as a cultural metaphor than a historical account of linguistic origin, but its persistence across Jewish, Christian, and Islamic texts speaks to its resonance with human experience, particularly the tension between unity and division, ambition and humility, creation and chaos. And the story of Babel has left its fingerprints across millennia, influencing medieval art, Renaissance architecture, Enlightenment philosophy, and even modern political discourse. As seen in the metaphor of a babel of voices used to describe confusion and fragmentation in global dialogue, and while no definitive archaeological evidence confirms the Tower of Babel as described in Genesis, the ruins of Babylon, rediscovered and excavated in the 19th and 20th centuries by German archaeologists like Robert Koldewey, provide compelling material context, revealing massive foundations of what many believe to be the Edamananke, and clay tablets from the era, such as the Babylonian map of the world or the Asagila tablet, refer to monumental towers and temples aligned with celestial bodies, reinforcing the idea that such structures were central not just to religion but to cosmology and kingship. And these towers, built without cranes or steel, using nothing but baked mud bricks and bitumen mortar, were technological marvels, testaments to the organizational skill and theological devotion of ancient societies, and the image of a people united in language and purpose, only to be divided by divine intervention, mirrors real historical patterns. From the fragmentation of empires to the rise of diverse cultures and languages from common ancestral roots, and yet the deeper question lingers. Why did the biblical authors include this story, and what did it mean to its original audience, for the Hebrews exiled in Babylon? The story of Babel may have functioned as a critique of imperial arrogance, a symbolic inversion of their captor's greatest monument, recasting the prideful ziggurat not as a testament to divine glory but as a warning against overreaching ambition, and in this light, the Tower of Babel becomes more than a myth, it becomes a parable about the limits of human power, the fragility of unity, and the sacredness of diversity, and as we trace the story's evolution through time, we see how it has been reinterpreted again and again, from medieval theologians who saw it as the origin of the world's languages, to Enlightenment thinkers who used it to explore the nature of communication and misunderstanding, to modern linguists who now view the proliferation of languages as a natural evolutionary process rather than a divine punishment, and yet despite all scholarly advances, the mystery and allure of the tower endure, as does its symbolic resonance in an age increasingly marked by globalization, technological ascent, and the paradox of connection and fragmentation. And as we examine ancient inscriptions, explore ruined foundations, and decipher forgotten scripts, we are reminded that the Tower of Babel may never be found in its entirety. But its story remains embedded in the very foundations of human civilization, echoing through every language spoken today, every monument we build, and every effort to bridge the gaps between nations, cultures, and faiths. And in that sense, the real Tower of Babel was not just a physical structure but a cultural mirror reflecting both our highest aspirations and deepest insecurities, a monument not only lost in time but timeless in its relevance, and as long as we continue to reach for the heavens, seek unity in diversity, and grapple with the consequences of our ambitions, the legend of Babel will live on, not as a relic of the past, but as a parable for the future, reminding us that while our languages may differ, our stories often share the same foundation.